From inside the warehouse at Oriole Park at Camden Yards, it is the MASN All Access Podcast. Paul Mancano, Bobby Blanco.
J2.
Coming at you on J2, wherever you're listening, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, SoundCloud. And if you're watching on the MASN All Access Podcast, or the MASN All Access Facebook page, rather, you notice that Bobby Blanco is donning his USA... is that the men's or the women's?
This is the men's jersey from the 2010 World Cup.
Okay.
That was the year. Remember, if you recall, Landon Donovan had that crazy last-second goal against Algeria in the group stage.
Yeah.
That's when the year they played England in the first round, or in the first game of the Cup. That was a good World Cup for the United States. They ended up losing to Ghana, I believe, in the round of 16.
Look, I know next to nothing about soccer.
Yep.
I am the anti-Sarah Perlman in that respect.
Sarah Perlman knows a lot about soccer.
Considering she
played.
It looks like the U.S. is on hopefully their way to a victory as we record this.
Yeah, we're recording.
You're watching over my shoulder.
Yeah, I put it on over your shoulder because I need to be paying
because
attention.
you just don't want to not pay attention to me.
It's a world semifinal. I mean,
did you even make eye contact with me once in this podcast?
I'm making eye contact with you right now.
Unbelievable. You're staring through me.
No, it's I know you're not a big soccer guy, and I feel like we talked about this.
That's an understatement.
But I feel like we even talked about this last year during the Men's World Cup. But you got to appreciate the spectacle that is the World Cup.
Yeah,
in terms of it's an international tournament. It's the world's most popular sport. The U.S. team on the women's side is fantastic. They're so much fun to watch. They're so good. It's like, I know you're not a big soccer guy, but you have some interest, right?
I mean, I respect the heck out of the U.S. women's soccer team and the men's soccer team, but the women's soccer team, I know
not that good.
I know that they are dominant, and they're incredibly talented. I mean, that is, and I root for the U.S. in all endeavors.
Right.
It's just I just can't get into it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
That's fine, but I mean, it's exciting. I love. The Olympics, the World Cups, like they're so cool. Like I love.
I'm a huge Olympics guy.
There's nothing. The pinnacle of like any athlete's career is being able to play for his or her country,
right? Which
is very cool, and in a worldwide tournament.
Well, my question for you: I know the U.S. doesn't pay Olympic athletes. Do they pay the World Cup?
Oh, I forget. I don't know. I obviously there is a lot of conversation about the pay, especially with terms of the women's team.
Yes.
And equal pay. I know very little. I agree that they're horribly underpaid, but I don't know if and how much they get paid to play internationally and in the World Cup. I know, like, if you win,
right,
there's a certain, like, your country or your soccer federation, football federation, whatever, gets like a certain amount of money from FIFA. Like, pretty sure there's like a purse, I guess, like a champion's purse.
Yeah.
In terms of how you place within the tournament, but I'm not exactly sure what that is and how that's divvied up among the players.
Yeah, let's just avoid that bullet there. Didn't even think of that. You know who is getting paid? A lot of international free agents and amateurs on this day. J2, a lot of them making their first contracts ever for baseball. Congrats to a bunch of them. And 27 of them have signed already with the Baltimore Orioles. On the very first day, Mike Elias said that this was going to be the largest international signing period the Orioles have ever had in franchise history. They've already got 27 under their belt. Now, I saw some comments. We did a live show earlier on MASN All Access's Facebook page, on the MASN Orioles Facebook page. It went to YouTube. If you haven't watched it, please watch it. Steve Molesky talking. It's great. We got Kobe Perez.
Super easy to find.
Saw some comments on there about the Orioles not landing any of the top 30 guys, according to Baseball America, or whoever it is going to be. The thing is, you can't expect them to do that in their first foray, considering these kids are 16 years old, and the groundwork for these signings are laid out years. I mean years in advance.
Yeah.
This isn't something that Kobe Perez took over the job on January 2nd, literally, 6 months ago?
Mm-hmm.
You can't get that done in 6 months. You just can't. You have to build a relationship with these kids and establish them. That being said, that is incredibly impressive that the Orioles were able to nab 27 kids right off the bat in the first day, and they expect to be able to use more of that $6.5 million up until June 15th of next year when the signing period ends. Right off the bat, they got 27, Bobby.
Right, and it's kind of like along that conversation that we've had over this offseason in terms of the signings of the big guys, Victor Mesa Jr. It's great that the Orioles are in that conversation, and we're, at least amongst the finalists for those big-time international prospects, but they were never really going to come here. And I think everyone kind of understood that. But the whole idea of today, J2 2019, is that this is, like you said, like Michael Elias said, this is the biggest international signing day opening that the Orioles have ever taken part of. And it's a market, a pool of players that the Orioles have never really dipped into. We have not seen that. And Steve Molesky joined you on MASN Alexis today and mentioned, and nowadays you just can't ignore this. This is just too many good players, a whole continent, really, or everyone but the U.S., Canada, and Puerto Rico, the rest of the world of baseball players you can draft, or not draft, but sign and bring into your organization to help your team grow. It's just, it cannot be ignored. You cannot dream to compete in today's MLB without having a foreign system, international scouting system. And Michael Elias, Kobe Perez have done a fantastic job. We've heard quotes from Michael Elias saying they're actually well ahead of schedule. He didn't think that they'd be able to get this far this quickly. And the fact that they're now already looking at their 2020 pool, the 2021 pool, I mean, they're ahead of schedule, and that's good to see from the get-go.
And Steve Molesky threw out the number there. I think it's 30% of all major league clubhouses rosters are made up of
30% of every
international free agents.
That's crazy. To think that that's a third of your roster that's a third of your roster that the Orioles were choosing to ignore for up until this point. So it's pretty crazy.
And to think about the fact that most of these kids signed in this international signing period are around 16 years old, and if already 30% of major league clubhouses are international, that means that these kids signed literally a decade ago.
Right.
A lot of them, and some of them even more.
Yeah.
So the Orioles are, I mean, we have to take it all in a larger macro perspective. The Orioles are pretty behind in that area. So they're just catching up. And we had to catch up as well with it because Steve Molesky, I asked him last week about doing the interview for the show, and he said, look, I am just as new to this as the Orioles are. Now, Michael Elias isn't new to it. Kobe Perez isn't new to it. But the entire Orioles organization has never really delved into this market. And so the Orioles reporters and beat writers have never had to cover this and never really knew the full. Bobby, you and I talked about the rules of this yesterday, and it took us about an hour to break down.
For a half hour. Yeah, what does this mean?
Yeah, so I want to make clear for the fans who are listening to this who are pretty new to it as well what this means, the J2. And who is eligible for this and the importance of this day, basically. So it is this first day, just the first day of the signing period. Right. It's not like
it's one and done. It's not a draft day.
Yeah. And it's not like all these guys become available today and stop becoming available after today. It's the signing period opens today, and it is open through June 15th of 2020. Now, each team starts with about $5.5 million. Some teams have more than that, and some teams have less than that, and some teams are right around that $5.5 million mark. You can get more, basically determined is based on the competitive balance round pick. So you might remember during the draft, the Orioles had a competitive balance round B pick right after the second round. So that means that they are deemed one of the smaller markets in baseball.
Right.
They have almost $6.5 million to spend, and basically it's just a system that the Major League Baseball has concocted in order to give the smaller markets an advantage, which before this system existed, it was the Yankees and the Dodgers and maybe the Marlins would sign all of the top international free agents because they had a ton of money and because those were pretty much the only teams that all these players consistently knew about.
Right.
So the Orioles have $6.5 million. You can also lose money or lose slot allotment, how much you're allowed to spend because of making major signings. Obviously, the Orioles didn't do that this past offseason. They didn't sign an A.J. Pollock or a Bryce Harper or a Patrick Corbin. Those three teams that did sign those guys ended up losing slot allotment. They are now down below $5 million. And then the one team that has $0 is the Atlanta Braves because they went a little too hard in the international market to the point where they were breaking rules.
Some might say illegally.
To the point where they were breaking rules, and they have $0. So the Orioles are in good shape in terms of the amount of money they can spend.
Yep.
That's good, not just because the Orioles can spend all that money if they want to, which they're welcome and open to doing. But also, they can use that money. Now, previous regimes have, with the Orioles, have done that a little bit too much in terms of trading that money for prospects or trading that money for major league talent. But the Orioles can do that if they want to. And they can acquire up to 60% of that $6.5 million additionally via trades. So being in that competitive balance round B spot it's just the most ideal spot for any team.
Yeah, right. And think of it this way. I think a lot of people also get confused in terms of, well, where is this money coming from? Like the MLB gets, no. It's the Orioles money. Yeah. So think of it as like you have your bank account, and now you have a separate savings account. This is your pool of $5 million that you can use just for international money or throughout your organization, however you choose to use it. This is your money, it's not being given by MLB, not being given by any other outside source. It's coming from the team that this is the max that they're allowed to use for these signings and for these areas of their organization.
Yeah, and it's basically if they don't use all the money, which the Orioles didn't. Most teams don't use every single dollar that they end up spending or that they end up having for their slot allotment.
Right.
That money at the June 15th mark of 2020, that money goes back into the organization, basically can be used for anything else. Can be thrown at, somebody, can be thrown at our salary. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I wish.
That,
some of that $6.5 million, but basically it can be used for just about anything once it goes back into the organization. So the O's went out and they signed 27 guys.
Yep.
They weren't expected, as mentioned, to get any of the top guys, but they do have 3 guys at the top of this class that they feel pretty good about in terms of headlining the class. They're all 3 of these kids are 16. They're all from the Dominican Republic. The Orioles got 16 of their kids from the Dominican Republic, and it starts, Bobby, with Luis Gonzales off the top.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who can play all 3 outfield positions. It's a young, again, 16-year-old. This is the type of players, and we've talked about too that the more versatile, the better. So this guy being able to play all 3 outfield positions, obviously that has to come with some sort of speed, a power arm eventually. So the way his scouts look at him, he's got a potential impact bat with power from the left side of the plate, which is always coveted in Major League Baseball. And Luis Gonzales seems like a good starting position. And you mentioned not a top 5 guys, not a top 10, not top 30, whoever, but for where the Orioles are at in terms of just starting this process, getting 27 guys and then getting a guy like Luis Gonzales with all these tools is a really good start for them.
Yeah, and it's also keep in mind, Michael Elias talked about this on O's Extra when he went on last week with Rob Long. He basically said it is so hard. Think about it. These kids are 16 years old. How do you scout? How do you even begin to evaluate the kind of tools that a 16-year-old has?
Right.
And think about when these guys, the top 30 guys especially, this is a process that has taken years for these guys to agree to terms with teams. You're talking about kids that are 14, 15.
Right.
How do you know what they're going to be like at 21, 25, 30 years old?
Yeah.
It's nearly impossible. So the fact that you have to go where the Orioles are right now, the huge amount of guys. It is about spreading that money amongst as many guys pretty much as you possibly can. That's what Michael Elias has talked about in a macro perspective of this rebuild is getting as many guys in influx of talent. It's not just who's going to be, getting that number 1 pick, Adley Rutschman. That's awesome. But it's also about filling in the gaps with as many talented guys as you possibly can. 1,000 kids, literally 1,000 kids are going to be signed during this signing period. So as many talented guys as you can get is important.
Yeah, and we talked about for like a team going through a rebuild like this.
Yeah,
obviously restacking the farm system is your number 1 priority. For the Orioles as well, it's not restacking because there's nothing to begin with. It's starting to stack your international department and. Obviously, you want quality players. You want guys that have a chance, have a really good upside, like a Luis Gonzales, to make it through the minor league system and eventually to the major leagues. But you never know. Like you said, the kid's 16. Who knows how he's going to be in 5 years? Freak injuries happen. He could dip off. He could maybe not grow into as much as they think they're going to do.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's 1 of 27 is the key for me, at least.
Yeah.
You're at least starting somewhere and starting big. There's a big pool of guys. Say 1 or 2 of these 27 guys become one of your top prospects in the next 5 or so years. that's a good start, I think, in my mind, for Michael Elias and Kobe Perez in terms of starting this whole process of scouting in the international markets.
And two of the other three guys that the Orioles highlighted at the top of their class. And keep in mind, these are scouting reports that are pretty much handed to us by the Orioles. I mean, this is not, because it is impossible to really have boots on the ground to study these kids.
Right. Yeah. I mean, unless MASN's paying for us to go to the DR.
Yeah. And do you want to scout 1,000 kids?
No, but I would look.
Even if we had time to scout the top 30, we still wouldn't even have time to scout these kids.
Right. MASN All Access would be tough to do from down there.
It would be tough. We just need a solid internet connection.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all.
No, I wasn't worried about that.
It'd be cool to go down to the Dominican Republic Academy that they have down there.
And see that facility.
In Boca Chica that they have down there. We've seen some videos. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
We've seen some videos sent back from them as well that kind of show, the kind of facility that they have down there. There are a lot of teams that have facility. Anyway, I want to touch on these two guys real quick.
Yeah,
Lionel Sanchez, the shortstop. He turned 17 in December. He's got gap-to-gap power, as described, and he's got good, solid footwork and a good arm over there at shortstop. And left-handed pitcher Luis Ortiz, who bears the same name as the other pitcher who has made his debut with the Orioles last year and has made some spot appearances with the Orioles this year, is currently with the Norfolk Tides. Different Luis Ortiz. He's a lefty, turned 17 in September. He's already got command over 3 pitches, a fastball over 90 miles per hour, which for a 16-year-old is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And a changeup and a curveball. So I thought was interesting, too, about this class, Bobby, is the fact that during the draft we saw Michael Elias go heavy on shortstops, on catchers, and on center fielders. Because those shortstops and center fielders, speed positions, those are areas where you're going to get athletes at those spots. So like maybe if they're not, maybe their hitting doesn't fully develop, or maybe their defense at short might not fully develop. Odds are they can stick at another position, or their defense will propel them over the top. And then catchers, that's a unique skill that like Adley Rutschman, displayed. So Michael Elias, once again, going heavy on talent up the middle.
I thought that was I was going to bring this up too. I thought this was a really smart point made by you on MASN All Access today. It's up the middle. It's shortstops, obviously outfielders that include center field, and then catchers too. It's like we talk about quantity over quality.
Yeah.
To an extent, obviously, you want good players, but for just starting this process, you want more the better. Just get them in the building and see what they can do. But there's also a method to that madness in terms of we're still targeting these areas of the diamond.
Yeah.
And that's how we also approach the draft. That's how we're going to approach the signing period. We need a lot of these players in, but we're also not just going to take whoever just to get them in here. We're gonna take a lot of players at certain positions because that's where we want them to play. That's where we value players up the middle, catcher, short, second, outfield, and spread out, and then spread out to the corners. So yeah, I thought it was a really smart point made by you today on MASN All Access, and it's interesting to see how because it's not a draft. It is a period. This goes until mid-June of next year, and it's a kind of a free for all. Teams can go out and bid and sign players as they choose. It's no direct order. But there is sort of a method to, all right, we're going to approach the draft this way. We're going to take that mindset and also approach it to our international signings.
Well, if you remember during the draft, the picks that the Orioles made through round 7, so the first 8 picks that they made, Adley Rutschman, obviously a catcher, Gunnar Henderson, a shortstop, Kyle Stowers, a center fielder. Then rounds 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, they went center field, shortstop, catcher, center field.
Yeah.
That paints a pretty clear picture of where they value talent, and where they value positional talent. Another nugget that was interesting that we got from Steve Mileski, that came initially from Kobe Perez, was about the fact that the Orioles had to dive into this market so late, what kind of players were going to be available to them. And Perez said basically they were able to get more pitchers because of it. So
right.
Essentially, the idea is these pitchers showed skills later on, and when these kids are 14, they may not be the major league teams may not be sending analytics guys down there to be, looking at velocity and looking at, pitch break and all the kind of things that they evaluate major leaguers with right now. So the fact that these systems are slowly working their way down to other countries means that pitchers, there are more value later as we get closer to the signing period in pitchers, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah. And we've heard fans been asking for a long time, like, hey, this farm system needs pitchers. We want an influx of pitchers, and Steve Leslie touched on that part 2 today. And it's also funny that we've heard from Adam Pohl down in Bowie being like, well, this farm system actually has a lot of good pitchers.
Yeah.
But regardless, here you go. You've got 15 right-handers, and then you added, I believe it was a handful of lefties.
10 lefties.
10 righties, 6 lefties.
Yeah. 5 lefties. 5
lefties. So 15 pitchers overall.
Yeah.
So more than half of the 27 guys are pitchers.
Yeah.
So there you go. You're getting what you wanted in terms, and also up the middle defensively in terms of position players, and then plus all the pitchers. And that's pretty, it's not obviously 50-50, but 10 and 6, that's pretty balanced between right and left.
And also considering this draft was very bereft of pitching talent. And the fact that the Orioles did not draft a pitcher until, round 8?
Yeah.
Round 9? I mean, that's so because, there just wasn't pitching talent available, so they ended up getting pitching via a different way. It's all about optionality, about as many ways possible to find talent and bring it into the organization.
Yep. And then you already mentioned Luis Ortiz, and like a 16-year-old already touching 90, getting over 90.
Yeah.
He's on pace to touch 100 within a year or so. So So it's like, I'm not saying
no undue pressure,
right? But a 16-year-old already touching 90. I mean, that's pretty impressive. We saw Tom Eshelman last night make his major league debut for the Orioles against the Rays, and he was struggling to touch 90. So the fact that a 16-year-old is already doing that, I mean, that's a power arm you already got there in the waiting.
At 16, I was touching 90 pounds.
All right.
I was
so proud of you.
I was not actually that, but I was tiny,
small little Paul.
I was
wee little.
Oh yeah. And then the metabolism slows down. And let's just
and now here's the man before
I'm just
you.
steps from the grave.
You're
now.
Oh, come on. Don't say that, because that means I have to do the MASN All Access shows from here on out, and that's a lot of pressure.
Absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some actual baseball, Bobby.
Okay.
Some actual baseball that's going on right now in the major leagues.
Aki.
Yes. See. The Orioles have had some pretty big rotational shakeups over the past couple weeks or so. John Means, Andrew Kashner, Dylan Bundy. Those are pretty much the only 3 that are locked right now into the rotation.
Yep.
Brandon Hyde is having to mix and match a little bit in the first few games of the Rays series, going with Tom Eshelman and then Asher Wojciechowski. We think Brandon Hyde even acknowledged after the game, the first game, he didn't really know how to say his name.
So according to is this the right? He plays Baltimore. So according to Baseball Reference, I'm seeing Wojciechowski.
Wojciechowski.
Wojciechowski. Wojciechowski.
I still don't know how to ski.
I've never gone skiing or snowboarding. Nope.
Terrible skier. So they're kind of having to mix and match. Eshelman actually looked pretty good in this first. Did not get a strikeout in 5 innings, weirdly. Mm-hmm. Got a ton of ground balls, though. Got out of some jams and only allowed 2 runs.
Yeah, and we saw Brandon Hyde touch on that with his post-game interview with Jim Hunter, being like, when you throw, he's not, again, didn't touch 90, so not a hard thrower, not a flamethrower, but, if you place your pitches and put them where you want, you get ground ball outs, and that's what he did. I really liked, he only went 5, and the offense put him in position to get the W, actually, in the 5th, or after the 5th, in the 6th. But I like how he struggled, gave up 2 runs early in the first, and then kind of leveled out. I mean, it was nerves. It's your major league debut.
Yeah.
He kind of leveled out, and then he actually pitched pretty well over the next 4 innings.
It looked like the Rays were about to light him up.
Oh, yeah. I was sitting here being like, I'm going to be here forever.
Yeah, and especially to bounce back from the fact that the defense wasn't behind him. I mean, VR dropped what could have been a double play ball at one point, and they could have gotten out of the inning.
Right.
I don't know if they eventually called that an error or a hit. But
I don't remember.
Basically, like, the defense wasn't behind him. That can rattle a young pitcher, especially. The fact that he was able to kind of work, so many times you see guys that like are making their major league debut or getting a call at the last second, and they just come out and get shelled. But and it looked like it was headed down that path, but he settled in pretty quickly. Speaking of guys that don't throw very hard, but still having success.
Yes,
John Means. Heading to the All-Star game, 7-4 record, 2.50 ERA. I mean, certainly impressive, and certainly deserving, absolutely deserving of an All-Star bid in his rookie season. You gotta feel for Trey Mancini.
Absolutely. I mean, so we're having this conversation the other night in the web studio. I'm still confused as to how this voting process for the All-Star game.
I don't fully get it.
I know the fans voted for the starters, right?
So the fans put
the starting.
Yeah, but didn't they come and the fans also had the it was the fans' vote that they took into account in order to get the final guys for the starters.
So and then the rest of the roster is selected by either the players or MLB.
Right. Well, and the coaching staff, right? For like the Dodgers.
Well, that's what. So is that part of the players/coaches, or is that the MLB office doing that? So because either way, what I saw, John Means was an MLB selection. So the office. So that to me that means MLB. Rob Manfred's office selected John Means as the Orioles representative. Every team needs a representative. It's John Means for the Orioles, which is like great. Again, great for him. He deserved it. But I was also wondering how come Trey Mancini got passed over there.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's the face of the franchise right now. He's the best offensive player, position player that they have. He ranks in the top 3 in many statistical categories for outfielders in the American League. It's just incredible that he's not an all-star, and you just wonder, well, is there just an influx of all-star of outfielders in the American League? And had he played more first base, he probably would have made it.
Right.
So I was just wondering what was their thought process in selecting John Means over Trey Mancini, because they both deserve it. Why can't both go? And if you had to choose one, not that it was wrong, right or wrong either way, but why John Means over Trey Mancini? That'd be my question.
Well, I think it was right that they picked John Means, but I think it was wrong that they didn't pick Trey Mancini. No bias there at all, of course. But basically, I mean, you talked about him ranking and doing well amongst American League outfielders. Trey Mancini, some AL outfield ranks for you. 2nd in batting average, 8th in on-base percentage, 4th in slugging percentage, 2nd in total hits, 9th in homers, tied 7th in doubles. I mean, that guy, he is playing like an all-star all season. It really hurts that he didn't get it. And I agree with you, Bobby. I don't know the method to the madness of picking all-stars, because how much sway does the fan vote have compared to the player vote, compared to the Dodgers and Red Sox coaching staffs, compared to Commissioner Rob Manfred? And then you have other factors to consider. Every team needs a representative, and certain guys are going to get a leg up, like the fact that Hyunjin Ryu is starting for the National League, and it might help that the Dodgers have the entire coaching staff there to pick the National League starter. I mean, there are so many, way too many factors going on here, in my opinion, to be able to determine where any of this stuff comes from. I just want to see a clear system where we know exactly how much sway each party has, or maybe remove some sway from a party. Maybe the fans don't get a vote, or maybe the players don't get a vote, or maybe the commissioner doesn't get to pick anybody. It's so confusing, and it just kind of feels like for a system that is supposedly democratic, it doesn't feel democratic at all. It feels like you just throw your vote in there, and then the commissioner or the teams or the players just kind of pick whoever they want.
Yeah. And so what I'm looking at right now, the breakdown of the rosters. So yes, fans voted and selected the starters. The rest, the pitchers and the reserves, are then first player elected, so voted on by their peers, and then to fill out the rest of the roster after that is MLB choices. And John Means was an MLB choice. It says a choice of MLB after fan and player election. So someone in the commissioner's office or at the head office of MLB selected John Means, which again, was not wrong, but I was wondering you had to pick one Orioles representative, at least one, if not two. What was the choice between? Was it because there are so many outfielders in the American League and you needed just added pitching to the staff?
Well, and does the commissioner's office take into account fan voting /
the player vote,
the player tallies, or are they just making that decision willy-nilly?
Right.
I mean, are they beholden to anyone
to
make that decision? And the fact that it is always so weird to me that fans don't vote on pitchers, I never fully understood that.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the reasoning? Why can they vote on position players but not pitchers? To me, that never really makes sense.
Maybe it's because there's only but there's also a finite of position players. Like, there's only so many. Well, how about this? Because unlike position players, you're a starter or you're a reliever for the most part in pitchers. So, like, all the starters are going to get voted on.
Well, then why don't they split it up? Why don't they say you vote for some starters and you vote for, they split it up into two categories?
Right. So you vote for your AL starters and relievers, your NL starters and relievers. Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. But just a rundown of the roster. Here are the outfielders that got in over Trey Mancini for the American League. The starters: Mike Trout, George Springer, Michael Brantley. No argument there. But then the reserves: Mookie Betts, Joey Gallo, Austin Meadows, and Whit Merrifield for the Royals. I mean, Trey Mancini has got to be up there with those four guys in terms of reserves.
I mean, Gallo definitely. I honestly don't know much about Austin Meadows and what he's done this year. Mookie Betts, obviously, he's the reigning MVP. I get that. Whit Merrifield, I don't know. Was he the only Royal selection? Like, did they have to fill a spot there? I have to look up Austin Meadows. I mean, it's like it ends up being just such a weird thing.
It seems like Whit Merrifield is the Royals' only representative.
Okay, so maybe they had to shoehorn a guy in there, and he was the only guy that really fit that bill. I mean, Austin Meadows is having a good year for the Rays. I just looked up his stats. He's got 12 homers, hitting .291, 41 RBIs, and I mean that doesn't.
Yeah,
Trey Mancini hasn't beaten every possession there, right?
Right. Yeah. So
I mean, I don't get that.
Like with any All-Star game, not every person who deserves is going to go.
Yeah.
Which is, I understand that it is what it is. It's just a shame. You know, you would hope that. You can't even do that. Like, I was gonna say, we
set a low bar.
Yeah. Well, you are an all-star. You just don't get to go to the game, which would be like doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean,
it's almost like
no all-star selection is perfect, especially in baseball.
Yeah. It's almost like they should pick the best players in the American League and the National League. Almost it feels like every layer that they add, they remove themselves from that idea.
Well, I've never been a fan of every team gets a representative. It's like, then guys who don't deserve are going, and guys who do deserve don't.
Right. And I understand the reasoning behind it, because it ends up it's a way for them to try to grow the game. So like every kid in every town has somebody that they can root for. There's a kid in Kansas City who's rooting for Whit Merrifield.
Yeah.
In the All-Star
growing
game.
up, there were a lot of times like I only watched the All-Star game to watch like the one or two Orioles that made it, like Miguel Tejada, Melvin Mora.
That's the
like
thing.
That one All-Star game that Miguel Tejada, Melvin Mora, and Brian Roberts were the starting infield. Like that was so cool.
Yeah.
But then every other year, like only one guy made it, and it was usually like Tejada.
Well, and it's funny because that also increases the amount of media coverage, obviously. So like they send more people, but also we covered the All-Star game last year, and that's annoying. There are so many darn people in there.
I mean, like, no offense to Austin Meadows or Whit Merrifield, but I'm not going to watch into the eighth inning to see them trot on the field. Like, congratulations. That's a great honor. You're an all-star. That's a high praise from your peers and your commissioner's office. But for me, I mean, you're two small market teams. Maybe Meadows because he's in the Orioles division. Maybe that's, even to me, that's a stretch.
Right.
I mean, I'm going to be watching to see John Means hopefully pitch in the later innings. He's starting Wednesday night. He'll be able to pitch in the All-Star game, which is really cool. But after that, like, there's no other reason to watch.
And it's
especially
also
for Orioles fans.
And it's also, I mean, the whole process obviously is just kind of. I think we have to realize that it is not an end-all be-all for for guys' success, because it is ultimately still a first-half honor as well. Guys who go on to have second halves, a lot of times there are guys who finish in the top 5 for MVP who weren't All-Stars.
That's a good point.
Or Cy Youngs who weren't All-Stars because they were fine in the first half and have amazing second halves. Right. So it is just a shame that because it still means something to the players. Oh, it still means a lot to the players.
Well, I mean, I was heartbroken for Trey Mancini. Like, seeing Trey Mancini speak to the media on O's Extra on Monday night was like, I figured he was disappointed. I didn't realize he was that heartbroken about it, and that made me heartbroken. I was like, wow, this is a guy who really thought thought he deserved, which he did.
He did.
And then 2, really wanted to go. And he, for the first time, and in a season that's going to be such a tough go for the Orioles all year long, for a guy that's given up to this point everything he has in his career to this organization, to be able to represent them in Cleveland at the All-Star game would have been he would have been so proud and would have loved to do it. But I mean, so it makes sense that he's devastated. I wasn't expecting it. I thought he would be like, oh, that's a shame. But he was really hurt about it, and that made me hurt.
And you never know how many chances you're going to get to do it.
Right. That's true. That's a good point, too. Like, we don't know his future, whether it's with this team or another team, and you know, how his health is. You know, knock on wood, hopefully it's great. And
right.
He's on pace to be a future All-Star and a multi-time All-Star, but you never know.
You never know. We've seen for several different reasons. You could get, you know, you could have a rough first half. You could get injured. So many different things. And it's not like he's 21. He's 27.
Right. And on the flip side of the coin, though, same thing for John Means. Like, you know, you never know if he's going to get another chance to go to the All-Star game, too.
Yeah.
So it's a great story that he's get to go this year because, you know, especially with pitchers, even more so, you never know when you're going to be able to go, especially as they're not really voted on. So it makes that even more special for him.
And it's a shame that the Mancini not being selected puts a little bit of a cloud over Means getting selected, because that is still in and of itself an incredible story that you know, it is not going to get lost by any stretch. Right. It will definitely get its day and its coverage, but it is kind of twinged with sadness. In that we don't get to see Trey there.
I think we'll always remember like the 2019 All-Star game for like, yay, John Means. Dang it for Trey Mancini. What? Frustrating.
Personally, I can't wait for Trey Mancini's revenge tour. He's going to hit 400
he's
the second
slug.
half. He's just going to be
over 1,000.
He's going to finish in the top 5 for MVP, just as you know, sign of his dominance.
I really wanted him to homer last night so I could do like that SpongeBob meme, like he's not in All-Star.
You still have like I feel like any time from now until the All-Star break.
Until Sunday, through Sunday. Until the All-Star break. I can't wait.
Pretty much. That just about does it for the MASN All Access podcast. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Give us a like or a favorite on whatever platform you so choose.
Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play. Give us a follow. MASN Orioles on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Give them a follow, and you can give me a follow at Bobby_Blanco. Paul, where they can find you?
At Paul Mancano. Those are our Twitter handles, and we will see you later.